So we know Sunny Hostin and her husband, Dr. Emmanuel Hostin, are preparing for a legal battle to fight accusations that he committed federal insurance fraud. Emmanuel denied the allegations via a statement through his lawyer, telling Daily Mail that his client, quote, denies each and every allegation and that the lawsuit is a blanket, scattershot, meritless lawsuit.
The story begins with a moment that should have been unifying, a classic rendition of America the Beautiful, sung by none other than Carrie Underwood at Donald Trump's presidential inauguration. On the surface, it seemed as straightforward as any patriotic performance could be. A beloved country superstar standing in front of the Capitol, draped in red, white, and blue, serenading the nation with a timeless anthem. But in today's cultural minefield, nothing is ever just a song. Within hours of stepping off that stage, Carrie found herself at the center of a storm so fierce, so unrelenting, that it would redefine not only her public image, but also the boundaries of celebrity, politics, and personal judgment.
Let's put this in perspective here. What do y'all think?
I personally hope we're moving beyond the era of politics where we want to cancel people's livelihoods because we don't like their politics. And whether it was the Dixie Chicks for criticizing George Bush, didn't agree with it then, and Carrie Underwood, if you have a problem, you register your complaint by not downloading her songs and not going to her shows.
Right.
But I also think from a business standpoint, it's not a bad decision for Carrie Underwood.
For some, Carrie Underwood was doing what she had always done best, singing her heart out for her country. I love our country and am honored to have been asked to sing at the inauguration and to be a small part of this historic event, she said in a statement. But for others, that performance was a declaration, a line drawn in the sand. To them, it wasn't just a song, it was an endorsement, and not just of the office of the president, but of the man himself. The man whose name, for better or worse, has become a flashpoint in American culture. Carrie's decision to perform wasn't seen as neutral, it was seen as a choice, a loud and undeniable choice. And the backlash, it came fast, loud, and brutal.
The big inauguration news today is not Pelosi. Yesterday it was Michelle. It's Carrie Underwood. And apparently she's losing all sorts of fan groups. The LGBTQ community in particular, I guess, is very upset about the fact that she's agreed to sing at the inauguration. And she's saying, I love my country. I think this is a great chance to express that love and participate in a moment of unity.
Social media lit up like a powder keg. Fans turned into critics, critics turned into activists, and hashtags exploded overnight. The reaction wasn't just disappointment, it was fury. How could she? Asked one commenter. We thought she was better than this, said another. Every post seemed to carry the weight of personal betrayal, as if Carrie Underwood herself had walked into their living rooms and ripped down their hopes for a better, more unified America. And leading the charge was Sunny Hostin, co-host of The View, who wasted no time in taking a direct, and some might say deeply personal, swipe at the country star.
Oh, I would not normalize him. And she says, I love our country. How do you love your country and support and normalize somebody who was a convicted felon who really wants to destroy the country, in my opinion? I don't understand how you say you love your country at the same time as you normalize this convicted felon, which I can say now every day.
Sunny's criticism wasn't just a passing remark. It was pointed, surgical, and, to many, deeply inflammatory. She questioned Carrie's values, her patriotism, even her integrity. On air, Sunny declared that Carrie's performance felt like a slap in the face to the values she claimed to hold dear. But she didn't stop there. Sunny went further, suggesting that Carrie's choice to perform for what she called a convicted felon was not just disappointing, it was damning. The message was clear. This wasn't just about a song or a stage. This was about what it meant to align yourself, even indirectly, with someone as polarizing as Donald Trump. The blowback was immediate. Carrie's fans, who had adored her for years, came out swinging in her defense. They flooded Sunny's social media with comments, calling her out for what they saw as an unfair and hypocritical attack. You're the one dividing the country, one follower wrote. Carrie has every right to perform wherever she wants. But for every defender, there was a detractor. The internet quickly devolved into a battlefield with hashtags like Cancel Carrie Underwood trending alongside Stand with Carrie. It was a digital civil war and the stakes felt impossibly high. And while Sunny's words may have set the match to the fire, it was Carrie's silence that added fuel. For days, she refused to comment. No statements, no interviews, no carefully crafted Instagram posts, nothing. And in that silence, speculation grew. Was she embarrassed? Angry, regretful, or was she simply above the fray, unwilling to dignify the criticism with a response? The lack of clarity only amplified the noise, with each side projecting their own narrative onto her silence. But this wasn't just a social media spat, this was something far bigger. Within days, the controversy had spilled into mainstream media, with headlines dissecting every angle of the story. Morning shows debated whether celebrities had a responsibility to align their actions with their fans' values. Opinion pieces questioned whether patriotism could ever truly be divorced from politics. And then there was The View itself, which became ground zero for the escalating drama.
And that's exactly what Carrie Underwood has taxed herself with. And let's be real, she hasn't come out and given any statement about her politics or how she feels about the 2024 election. So let her be her and let her love this country. We used to be under the umbrella of a shared love for country, but differences in politics. And now it's if you love your country, if you want to represent America, you're a white supremacist MAGA supporter.
Sunny Hostin, never one to back down, doubled down on her comments during a subsequent episode. She called out not just Carrie, but the culture of celebrity that she claimed allowed stars to avoid accountability for their choices. "You can't have it both ways," Sunny said, her voice cutting through the studio like a knife. "You can't say you love your country and then turn around and perform for someone who has actively worked to divide it." The audience erupted in applause, but the backlash from Carrie's supporters was swift and unrelenting. They accused Sunny of using her platform to bully and smear someone who had done nothing more than sing a song. And the louder the criticism grew, the more polarizing Sunny became. It was no longer just about Carrie Underwood or Donald Trump. It was about something bigger, something deeper. It was about the culture wars that have come to define American life. It was about the impossible expectations placed on public figures. And perhaps most of all, it was about the growing chasm between those who see the world through a lens of absolutes and those who live in the murky gray of nuance.
Stuff. Let's just not forget who she is. She's been, for years, lecturing America about morality, inequality, systemic failures.
And then, just when it seemed like the story had reached its peak, Carrie Underwood made her move. In a stunning and unexpected twist, she filed a defamation lawsuit against Sunny Hostin and other hosts of The View. The allegations were serious, claiming that Sunny's comments were not just opinions but outright lies that had caused irreparable harm to Carrie's reputation and career. It was a bold move, one that signaled she wasn't just going to sit back and let the narrative be written for her, she was taking control. The lawsuit sent shockwaves through the entertainment world. Legal experts dissected the claims on cable news, while fans and critics alike debated the ethics of using the courts to settle what some saw as a personal feud. But for Carrie, this wasn't just about clearing her name. It was about sending a message that words have consequences, especially when spoken on a platform as influential as The View.
I feel pretty strongly about it. I think art is art, and you have a right to perform where you want to perform. I agree with you, Joy. I can't sing a lick, but I certainly, and I have not been asked, but if I were asked, it would be a hard no.
If Sunny Hostin felt any remorse, she didn't show it. Instead, she continued to stand by her comments even as her critics grew louder and the legal stakes mounted. And that's when another voice entered the fray, a voice known for its unfiltered opinions and massive platform, Joe Rogan. Rogan's podcast, known for its no-holds-barred approach, became the next battleground in this escalating war of words. He didn't mince words, calling out Sunny for what he described as performative outrage and hypocrisy. But Rogan didn't stop there. He went after The View as a whole, branding it a sensationalist circus that thrived on chaos rather than meaningful conversation. His comments went viral overnight, adding yet another layer of complexity to an already tangled web of controversy.
Now, he's just accused, and this accused in a lawsuit after some time of investigation could ultimately become a federal indictment. And
as the internet erupted once again, the story took on a life of its own. What had started as a single performance at a political event had snowballed into a full-blown cultural reckoning. Alliances were formed, lines were drawn, and the stakes only seemed to grow higher with each passing day. And yet, despite all the noise, one question loomed larger than any other. Where did this end? Or perhaps the better question was, had it even truly begun?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised by this whatsoever. If you have any sort of association with Donald Trump, even if that's just singing at the inauguration, you're going to be cut off by every single left-leaning person who used to be a fan of yours. But really, are we surprised? I mean, just look at Carrie Underwood. Have you guys seen the CMAs? Do you know what's going on in country music? It's pretty typical.
And just as Rogan's blistering takedown was gaining traction, the story took another sharp turn. Behind the scenes, whispers were growing louder at ABC. Inside sources began leaking tidbits about mounting discomfort with Sunny Hostin's increasingly polarizing presence on The View. Producers were reportedly fielding calls from advertisers, yes, the lifeblood of daytime television, and not all of them were thrilled about the drama surrounding their brand ambassador. The fear wasn't just that Sunny had crossed a line, it was that she might be dragging the entire show down with her. Internally, the chatter wasn't about damage control, it was about survival.
But it's just, I mean, Pat, you're married. Tom, you're married. If your husband's doing something, if he's allegedly doing something like this, you guys would know if your wives were up to.
The timing couldn't have been worse. Ratings for The View had been on a precarious seesaw for years, and while controversy often serves as rocket fuel for television, this wasn't the kind of attention the show wanted. Angry fans weren't just targeting Sunny, they were targeting the show itself. Under every new post on The View's social media accounts, the comment section looked like a battlefield. "Cancel this show already," screamed one user. "It's just one big hypocrisy fest," wrote another. And then there were the hashtags, "Cancel The View," "Fire Sunny Hostin," and even "Boycott ABC" were trending across platforms. It wasn't just noise, it was a coordinated uproar, and the executives at ABC were feeling the heat. But here's the kicker. While the public was busy clamoring for accountability, the network's leadership was allegedly having a very different conversation behind closed doors. According to insiders, there was a split within the production team. Some believed Sunny's outspoken nature was part of her appeal, polarizing, yes, but undeniably captivating. Others saw her as a liability, a ticking time bomb whose controversies were becoming harder and harder to justify. One source described the atmosphere as tense, claiming that meetings about Sunny's future on the show were becoming a regular occurrence. But here's the thing, firing her wasn't as simple as it sounded.
Or not, because if I believe I have the right to make up my mind to go perform someplace, I believe they have the same right.
Of course.
And so
That's
I have
true.
to, I have to support. Doesn't mean I'm particularly interested in what I won't be watching, but that's me.
Yeah, I've scheduled a spa day.
Sunny Hostin wasn't just another co-host. She was a lawyer, a journalist, and a key player in the show's dynamic. Her ability to articulate her points with surgical precision and, let's face it, cut down her opponents like a seasoned debater was part of what made her a star. But that same sharpness was now cutting too close to the bone. Producers reportedly debated whether her growing list of controversies had finally tipped the scales. Could they afford to keep her? Could they afford to lose her? And more importantly, could they survive the fallout of either decision?
That this cohort of queer fans of Underwood have spent more than a decade believing the singer supported them. Now they're in the midst of unraveling what it means to be suddenly shocked into a reality that does not align with their own.
Meanwhile, Sunny's silence on the lawsuit was only feeding the fire. As Carrie Underwood's legal team rolled out carefully worded statements, Sunny said, "Nothing. Not a word on air, not a tweet, not even a vague Instagram story." To some, her silence was strategic, an attempt to let the storm pass without adding fuel to the flames. But to others, it reeked of arrogance, as if she believed herself untouchable. And let's not forget, this wasn't the first time Sunny had found herself in hot water. Her track record was starting to read like a greatest hits album of public missteps, and the critics were more than happy to play it on repeat.
Okay.
Oh, no one else had any
So
thoughts?
there we
No
are.
thoughts?
No, we've had people like Reba McEntire come on
Yes.
and say that, she doesn't want to talk about politics. She just wants to sing, she wants to perform, she wants to make people feel good. And I respect that. And then we've had people like Dolly Parton, and I think you asked her, or
Are you a
maybe,
feminist?
"Are you a feminist?" And she
She
said,
said, "I don't think so."
I don't think so.
Take, for instance, the explosive comments she made about non-college educated white women during a recent episode of The View. It was a throwaway line, delivered almost casually, but it landed like a grenade. The backlash was immediate and brutal. Viewers accused her of being elitist, out of touch, even discriminatory, and while Sunny later clarified her remarks, the damage was done. The clip went viral, and the narrative was set. Sunny Hostin wasn't just polarizing, she was divisive. And in the world of daytime television, where sponsors and audience loyalty reign supreme, contentious can be fatal.
This is the largest RICO case ever filed in the state of New York. You guys wrap that around your brain. That's bigger than the mafia.
But here's where the plot thickens. Even as Sunny's critics called for her head, her supporters were rallying behind her with equal fervor. To them, she wasn't a liability, she was a truth teller, a fearless voice in a sea of manufactured opinions. They argued that the backlash against her was proof of her impact, that her willingness to speak uncomfortable truths was exactly why she belonged on The View. And for every angry comment demanding her resignation, there was another praising her courage. And then, as if the drama weren't already spilling over the edges, Sunny's personal life became the next target. News broke that her husband, Dre Emmanuel Hostin, was facing allegations of insurance fraud in a sprawling federal lawsuit. The details were messy, the accusations damning. According to the lawsuit, Hostin and his practice were allegedly involved in a kickback scheme that defrauded insurance companies by performing unnecessary medical procedures. The case named over 100 defendants, but Sunny's husband was one of the most high-profile. And while Sunny herself wasn't implicated, the headlines were impossible to ignore.
The View co-host Sunny Hostin's husband, Emmanuel Hostin, has been accused of federal insurance fraud.
For her critics, this was manna from heaven. They pounced on the story, using it as further evidence that Sunny couldn't be trusted. Birds of a feather, wrote one commenter. Yes, corruption runs in the family, said another. The narrative was clear. If Sunny Hostin's husband was embroiled in scandal, then she must be too. Never mind the lack of evidence. In the court of public opinion, guilt by association was more than enough. But Sunny wasn't about to take this lying down. Just days after the lawsuit went public, she released a scathing statement, accusing the insurance company behind the suit of launching a smear campaign against her family. She called the allegations baseless and defamatory, and announced plans to file a countersuit for reputational damage. It was a bold move, one that signaled she wasn't just fighting for her husband, she was fighting for her own name. But bold moves come with risks, and this one was no exception. If the countersuit backfired, it could further tarnish her already fragile public image. And if it succeeded, well, that was anyone's guess.
According to the documents, he knowingly provided fraudulent medical and other healthcare services, including arthroscopic surgeries.
Meanwhile, the pressure on ABC continued to mount. The network was caught in an impossible position. On one hand, they couldn't afford to alienate Sunny's loyal fan base. On the other hand, they couldn't ignore the growing chorus of voices calling for her removal. Every decision felt like a gamble, and the stakes were only getting higher. Producers reportedly floated the idea of a temporary suspension, a way to appease critics without fully cutting ties, but even that came with risks. Would a suspension be seen as an admission of guilt? Would it embolden Sunny's detractors? Or would it simply make her a martyr in the eyes of her supporters?
Of Sunny Hostin on The View, Tom, basically implicating her husband in this type of a scheme.
And then there was the matter of The View itself. Rumors began swirling that the show's future might be in jeopardy. Some insiders claimed that ABC was considering a complete overhaul, while others speculated that the network might pull the plug entirely. After all, how much controversy could one show endure before it became more trouble than it was worth? The idea of The View, a cornerstone of daytime television for over 2 decades, being canceled was almost unthinkable. But in today's climate, where public opinion can shift with a single tweet, nothing was off the table. So where does this leave us? A beloved country star fighting to clear her name, a polarizing talk show host scrambling to hold on to hers, and a daytime institution teetering on the edge of collapse. It's a story that feels too wild to be true, and yet, here we are. The question is, how much further can it go? Will Sunny Hostin weather the storm, or is her time on The View running out? And what about Carrie Underwood? Will her lawsuit set a new standard for accountability, or will it backfire spectacularly? As the drama unfolds, one thing is certain. This story is far from over. So what do you think? Is Sunny Hostin being unfairly targeted, or is she finally facing the consequences of her actions? And what about Carrie? Was she right to fight back, or is she taking things too far? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and trust us, this is one saga you're going to want to keep following. We'll see you in the next one.